This is Camnet News. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sharon Kalimbula. The top stories on our desk this evening. President HH fires senior government officials. UPND government urged to be cautious with the constitutional reforms. And former police IG KAKOMA KANGANJA claims that he was never corrupt as he bids farewell to the service. In international news, West Africa turns to sanctions. And in sports news, National Paralympic Committee of Zambia urged to build solid foundations. Join me shortly for the details.
The Camnet October Conference is fast approaching. To participate in the forthcoming conference, you're required to book your seat by paying 750 kwacha per person per day. Date 1st and 2nd October 2021. Venue the Healing Word Ministries International in Ibex Hill. Guest speakers include Professor Reda, Professor Munkumba, Mr. Nkuruma Kalaluka, Dr. Musonda, Dr. Sitima, Anthony from USA, Dr. Mwale, Honorable Bob Sichinga, Elias Bondela, and your hosts, Pastors Victoria and Moses Chiluba.
You can also participate via Zoom at 300 kwacha per day.
Make your payments through mobile money. For MTN, 096 296 5883. For Airtel, 097 975 3010. Our banking details are 913 000 182 5325. Stanbic Bank, Kablonga Branch.
For those living abroad, make payments via Wild Remit. The deadline for payments will be 28 September 2021. Any late payment made after 28 September will attract a penalty fee of 200 kwacha per person.
Once again, thank you for choosing us. A family of a deceased man in Mazabuka, Southern Province, is demanding health authorities at Mazabuka General Hospital to explain how a large chunk of skin from the left hand of their relative went missing after depositing his remains in the morgue. Relatives of the 70-year-old man of Chitongo village in Chief Hanjalika's chiefdom almost descended on the mortuary attendant after revealing that he suspects rats ate the skin of the corpse. This happened Friday morning when the relatives went to pick up the remains of the man, only to find his corpse naked with the skin on his left hand peeled off from 3 fingers almost up to the wrist. Milton Mwemba, the young brother to the deceased, the family said would not bury the remains without his missing skin. The family has since decided to wait until next week, Tuesday, before putting the deceased to rest, as the family suspects foul play. Meanwhile, efforts to get a comment from the hospital superintendent, Dr. Michael Mbelenga, could not materialize by broadcast time as his phone went unanswered. The story is courtesy of Baita FM. Senior Chief Kalindawalo of the Senga-speaking people of Petauke district has placed his tireless commitment to working in collaboration with the non-governmental Gender Coordinating Council in programs aimed at ending child marriage. The traditional ruler said the problem of child marriage has hindered young people, specifically girls, of their rights to education and the development of the communities, hence the need to work closely with organizations who champion the end against the scourge. He said his chiefdom formed the committees which have been instrumental in teaching the girls and communities about harmful impacts of child marriage across the chiefdom. Senior Chief Kalindawalo was speaking at his palace in Petauke when non-governmental Gender Coordinating Council donated 10 bicycles to foot soldiers of ending child marriage.
We declare that there will be no unwanted marriages. Then I won't even sit down to say that these young boys and young girls, they are just seated with the bicycles just for prestige. Because what I want is the chiefdom to progress. I think the basis of the chiefdom progress is we need to target the teen. So I want to leave out the teen, the young ones. So for this fight, what we want is you and I, we need to partner. Come 2030, the chiefdom will change.
I've come to hand over, my bicycles to the committees that have been set up to ease, I think, the transportation. But nonetheless, we will not sit back and just say, because there is an issue. We will do what we can as an organization that is focusing on the rights of women and also trying to empower women. So, like I said, this particular pillar is advocating for ending, child marriages as well as issues of gender-based violence. Because I'm sure you agree with me, Your Royal Highness, that if our girls, they drop out of school, vaenda muvikwati, varibe empowerment ili yonse, what happens after that? Ndiye manje ma GBV.
The National Legal Aid Clinic for Women says gender-based violence will continue to claim and destroy the lives of the victims, provided that the victims or the vice remain quiet over the matter. Speaking during a live women's rights program on Camnet television Friday morning, organization councillor Chileshe Ndlovu says some victims of gender-based violence do not realize that they are being abused due to some cultural norms. Mrs. Ndlovu says the fight against gender-based violence should not be left to the victims alone, but that it is a collective responsibility of every citizen to report GBV matters without seeking permission from the victims. And organization legal officer Wila Mulenga says there are various institutions that provide aid to victims of GBV, adding that no single life should be lost during this process.
The Zambia Police Service had disclosed that about 8,557 cases of gender-based violence were recorded during the fourth quarter of 2020, compared to 7,640 reported during the third quarter in the same year. This indicated that the country had recorded a 10.7% increase in the number of gender-based violence cases compared to the previous quarter. While many victims of gender-based violence have decided to remain quiet over the matter, the National Legal Aid Clinic for Women says shielding the perpetrators of gender-based violence crimes only makes the situation worse, as they are likely to repeat the act.
A slap is sufficient to amount to an act of gender-based violence. We've heard of women who have lost their sight, their sense of hearing, merely by being slapped. Some have even died. Maybe she slapped, in the process she falls and dies. So a slap is very much a form of gender-based violence, and one act is sufficient to constitute an act of gender-based violence. So if I'm beaten once, I can still go to the police. They won't turn me away. They won't say, no, no. A single act is enough to constitute an offense of gender-based violence.
She adds that there are many legal institutions in the country where the victims of GBV can be assisted.
Go to your nearest police station and report this case of gender-based violence and you'll be assisted. We also have our institution, the Legal Aid Clinic for Women. We help victims of gender-based violence, mainly women and children. We help by obtaining the orders that I had mentioned, the occupation orders, the protection orders, and the maintenance orders, just to protect them against cases of gender-based violence. There's also the YWCA. They also assist victims of gender-based violence. And the subordinate court, like I mentioned, is the only court which is mandated to hear issues of gender-based violence. The clerk of court at the subordinate court can assist a victim of gender-based violence to obtain a protection order.
And organization councillor Chileshe Ndlovu says the consequences of GBV in most incidences do not end well, hence the need to report such cases.
Effects of gender-based violence, the most serious one actually, is sometimes it results in death or permanent injury. Sometimes one of the survivor dies, or even then they're not a survivor, the victim dies, or sometimes because they've been a victim for such a long time, they end up killing the person who has been a perpetrator all their lives. And also sometimes you get a broken leg, you get broken limbs, you lose an eye. Those are some of the consequences. Sometimes children who grow up in such homes become future perpetrators themselves, because that's all they know. These are children who when they are playing with their friends, are always fighting, are always insulting.
GBV can take different forms such as physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, and mental abuse. While many victims of GBV decide to remain quiet because they view the perpetrators as their sources of income, or in the name of protecting the victim with the intention that they will one day change, change itself does not occur if there is no intervention, hence the need to ensure that GBV cases are reported. Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
President Hakainde Hichilema has with immediate effect terminated the services of some government officials at permanent secretary level and other senior government positions. Meanwhile, President Hichilema has also recalled some diplomats. Speaking during a press briefing Friday evening, Special Assistant to the President, Anton Walia, who read the speech on behalf of the President, states that the move has been made in view of keeping the promise of delivering service-based leadership. He reiterates that the termination of some government officials has been necessitated in order to entrench a culture of accountability. Let's look at this.
The list of terminations and diplomatic recalls is as follows. Mr. KAKOMA, National Coordinator, Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit, Headquarters, Saga. Ms. Juliana Shaw, Permanent Secretary, Office of the Vice President. Mr. Boniface Chwali, Permanent Secretary, Public Service Management Division. Mr. Amos Olupema, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Engineer Matthew Malube, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Local Government. Mr. Chandrakazia, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Labour and Social Security. Mr. Lennox Kalonde, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Works and Supply. Mr. Somoai Ziamu, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture. Mr. Bani Mulenga, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Mines and Mineral Development. Engineer Michelle Lung, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Transport and Communications. Dr. Saston Siloma, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Gender. Mr. Masie Band, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Home Affairs. Mr. Emmanuel Lula, Permanent Secretary, Administration, Ministry of Health. And appreciate some levels of anxiety which has been coming through from members of the public for the need for there to be expedient investments, not just with these positions that have been that have come for the decade, but several other positions. But the President continues to emphasize that we shall remain methodical and ensure that we find not just the other replacements, but suitable replacements of Zambians who are.
Meanwhile, an electoral expert, MacDonald Jupenzi, has called on President Hakainde Hichilema not to appoint cadres in the diplomatic service.
Those that will be taken in diplomatic service should be career people or people who are trained to do that, not cadres who from today they were saying, hey, tomorrow, no, you are a diplomat. I think that should come to an end. We must strengthen the Institute for Diplomacy, it's NIPA, and other institutions where people are supposed to be trained in this thing. So that when we are sending these people, they are truly the career diplomats who, even when government change, they are still relevant. And unlike now, when government changes, almost everyone comes back, which is not good, and it is service to the people. So we need career diplomats, we need people who understand what they are supposed to do, and we need people who appreciate that diplomatic service is not about cadres, but about citizens who appreciate the delivery of service outside there, and also the marketing of the country outside there.
The Zambian government has disclosed that the suspension of the debt swap program will be lifted once government clearly understands the rationale of the program. Vice President Mutale Nalumango has told Parliament that the implementation of the debt swap was rushed towards election time and lacked a consensus from all stakeholders. She was responding to a question from Chikankata Member of Parliament Jacqueline Sarao on government's position on the debt swap during the Vice President's question time in Parliament today. Nalumango said government will relook at the program and see how best it can be implemented. Meanwhile, Mrs. Nalumango has justified that President Hakainde Hichilema's scheduled trip to New York does not mean that Zambia has money, but rather a sacrifice, as he will be meeting institutions and individuals who will support Zambia's quest for economic stability.
Extremely interested and we care for them. However, the debt swap has many angles to it, that if we look at it seriously, we may find that the former government was culpable of failing the workers. Some of the dates, that's why we want to understand it fully, Madam Speaker. What was this debt swap? Some of the debt swap, like the Honorable Minister said, negotiated for 3 years. Some of the dates that the civil servants are seemingly indebted with is due to the failure of the same government that wanted to pretend to care for them. Why? We are also Zambians, we live here. Madam Speaker, by their failure to remit that which was deducted from the workers. I am using a language as I speak to my honorable, a language that is understood by me, who is not an economist, and every Zambian. That is what it means. Madam Speaker, you cannot talk about the president traveling as an issue of empty coffers. At that moment, you need everything that you can to get to the UN General Assembly, because it is during these travels that you start realizing to bring in money.
The Council of Churches has welcomed government's decision to abolish the Ministry of National Guidance and Religious Affairs. CCZ General Secretary Father Emmanuel Chikoya says the decision was rushed. The clergy has, however, noted that the exclusion of the ministry does not in any way trivialize the significance of Zambia being a Christian nation, adding that this will be known by deeds and not decrees.
Churches in Zambia, CCZ, welcomes and respects government's decision to do away with the Ministry of National Guidance and Religious Affairs. Historically, CCZ had advised against a rushed creation of the said ministry. We further want to underscore clearly that the exclusion of the ministry doesn't in any way trivialize the significance of Zambia being a Christian nation. We firmly believe that will be known by deeds and not decrees. We therefore urge the new administration to understand that a self-governing, self-sustaining and self-propagating church is a blessing to the nation, because the delivery of vital services such as education and health, including social services, are enhanced when the church is left to be the church, to offer checks and balances and promotion of good governance. It is our considered view that there should be a healthy, critical and mutual respect between the state and the church. The church must be given the necessary space to exercise its God-given mandate without any let or hindrance.
The Civil Society Constitution Agenda, CISCA, has called on the United Party for National Development to be as consultative as possible when revisiting the country's constitution-making process to ensure that whatever reforms are made will be responsive to the needs of the Zambian people. Speaking to Camnet TV, CISCA chairperson Judith Molenga has warned that the UPND reintroducing clones of bills such as the controversial Bill 10, which she alleges aimed at supporting the perpetual stay of the previous government in power. The UPND in its manifesto explicitly stated that they would embark on the constitutional reforms once they are given the mandate to lead this country.
As CISCA, our focus is on the Minister of Justice. And we pray that, with is a young person, and we are hopeful that, the natural zeal and energy that young people have will go to galvanize the Ministry of Justice. And also the Ministry of Justice houses the legislation department. So we do hope that when they start tackling with the legislation, they will not just be focusing on those legislations that would ultimately support, prop up, and strengthen the hegemony, the people with power. We hope that the legislations that will come will be people-centered, and we hope that it doesn't ever dream of having a clone of Bill 10 or anything similar to that. And I know for one that the manifesto of the UPND does categorically state that they will revisit the constitution making process. And we hope that Mr. Haimbe will be as consultative and will reach consensus so that we are not forever going back and back and back on the constitution.
Former Information and Media Permanent Secretary Amos Malupenga says the Access to Information Bill has been recalled to the Ministry of Justice for a relook before it can be taken to Parliament for enactment. Mr. Malupenga has, to this effect, called for dialogue between government and media bodies with a view of making progress on a number of legislation to strengthen the media. Speaking during a media and stakeholders roundtable meeting to look at the media under the new administration, Mr. Malupenga called for enhanced commitment for the media fraternity in order to release self-regulation. And speaking at the same meeting, Open Space Zambia Chief of Party Telda Mawarire underscored the need to ensure that media laws are put in place, taking into account the plight of the future generations. And Panos Institute Southern Africa Executive Director Vusimuzi Sifile says there is need to push the media agenda amid the government's open door policy.
Access to Information Bill from Minister of Justice. As you know, we had gone that far. We were just remaining with 1 or 2 steps from finalizing by way of taking it to Parliament for enactment. And so we have recalled the access to information just so we can relook at it internally for those reasons that I explained. And then after we have looked at it internally and updating our new minister, then we are going to call for a stakeholders meeting for the input to ensure that we are all on the same page.
I have been for many years, I think, working on various policy issues and matters of professionalism to try and improve the environment. Members of the Media Liaison Committee are here, of MISA are here. They've had various efforts and bills maybe that have not gone through, that they have put work into. So we recognize all of that past work, but we also do recognize that the environment itself has changed. Like we're saying that there's regulatory issues, there's new ICT issues, so how can we then also pick up that work that has been done in the past and come put it together to make something that is great for the future?
It's not just the responsibility of government. All of us have a role to play, and that is why all of us are in this space to address all those challenges that Mr. Kanene hypothesized about. I think that is our reality. It is not a very good reality, but I believe that with the kind of serious commitment that we are seeing from the different stakeholders, there is going to be some positive change.
Chawama constituency Member of Parliament Tasila Lungu has denied allegations established by Chawama losing United Party for National Development candidate Potfa Tembo that her winning the parliamentary seat in Chawama constituency was by dubious means. This is in a case in which Mr. Tembo has petitioned the election of Patriotic Front Chawama area Member of Parliament Tasila Lungu in the Lusaka High Court, citing malpractice in other illegal activities. He wants the court to declare that she was not duly elected and therefore her election should be declared null and void. However, in her response to the petition, Ms. Lungu has denied all the allegations and also denied that the PF self-proclaimed National Commander Innocent Kalimanshi and Nathan Piri engaged her as agents as alleged by Mr. Tembo in the petition. Details in this report.
Tasila Lungu, daughter to former President Edgar Lungu, who has been petitioned over elections before the Lusaka High Court by UPND losing candidate Potfa Tembo, has submitted that she won the Chawama constituency parliamentary seat without any malpractice or dubious means. The Chawama area Member of Parliament's election is being challenged by Mr. Tembo, who wants the court to declare that she was not duly elected, hence her elections must be declared null and void, citing violence and dubious activities, among other reasons. According to the petition filed before court recently by Mr. Tembo, he claims the elections were characterized by undue influence that resulted from threats and violence to life and property, including rampant physical attacks, sexual attacks, and rape on members of the UPND and other members of the general public. Mr. Tembo, in his petition, had further alleged that the respondent on August 11, 2021, around 21 hours, distributed mini-meal, 2.5-liter containers of cooking oil and 200 kwacha door-to-door in almost all the wards in Chawama. He had also accused the respondent agents of engaging in electoral malpractice, which made her election null and void. However, in responding to the petition, the Chawama lawmaker has denied all the allegations pointed out in the petition by Mr. Tembo and further denies that self-proclaimed PF National Commander Innocent Kalimanshi and Nathan Piri were agents as they have never been. She has submitted before court that she will avail a trial that the campaign period was relatively calm and peaceful, contrary to what the petitioner has stated in his petition. The Chawama lawmaker now wants the court to dismiss the petition with cost as it is baseless and lacks merit, as she was duly elected as Member of Parliament for Chawama constituency. The case continues before the Lusaka High Court. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
We will continue to follow those petitions that have been filed in the High Court. In other news, Zambia's power utility company ZESCO has dismissed reports that the country has begun experiencing load shedding following massive power outages experienced in various parts of the country. Speaking to Camnet TV, ZESCO's Senior Corporate Affairs Manager, Dr. John Kunda, states that all power outages are due to maintenance works and should not be seen as load shedding. And Dr. Kunda adds that the country has sufficient electricity and is in a position to export to neighboring countries should there be any need.
Zambia, like many African countries, has been subject to long schedules of load shedding lasting up to 8 hours at times, which has seen the downfall of many electricity-dependent businesses such as saloons, barber shops, butcheries, and welding shops, among others. Various communities have been hit with power outages of recent, sometimes lasting from morning to evening, which has caused them to question if load shedding has been reintroduced. In seeking answers, Camnet News engaged the power utility company ZESCO, whose Senior Corporate Affairs Manager Dr. John Kunda dismissed the claims. Dr. Kunda explains that the power outages are due to maintenance works and not load shedding.
Do we have load shedding in Zambia? There is nowhere where we are implementing deliberate, systematic management of electricity. What people are experiencing in a number of areas are faults and scheduled maintenance. One, we are working on the substation in Matero, which is yet to be completed fully after it was gutted down by fire. So you can't work with electricity when it's on. So sometimes we have to switch off people, but others we have cable faults, and we've also experienced quite some vandalism.
The ZESCO Senior Corporate Affairs Manager further states that Zambia is actually operating on excess power by over 1,000 megawatts and is in a position to export to neighboring countries should there be need.
On average, we are operating with excess power. And that's at peak. The 2,300 megawatts is at peak. So it means that there is power that can be traded on the SAP, as well as in some cases some bilateral agreement, again owing to sufficiency of power in the country. So the time when we have excess, because you can't store that power, that is power that can be agreed to be shared with some of our neighbors.
He has further advised citizens to report prolonged power outages, stating that this could be due to electrical faults, as the country is not due to be load-shedded anytime soon. Zipporah Mushala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
Former police IG KAKOMA KANGANJA claims he was never corrupt as he bids farewell to the service. This and more after the break.
In our quest to serve nations and develop Africa, Savenda is investing in the agriculture sector so as to produce supply for both local and international markets, housing over 12,000 pullets that are nurtured and fed with our locally made stock feed that comes from our own locally grown maize and soya beans, all processed from our recently installed milling and mixing plant. Our over 95,000 layers have an output capacity of over 1,500 trays of fresh eggs per day that are carefully selected and packaged for all the leading stores and supermarkets nationwide. Our greenhouses are fitted with the latest irrigation system, and the seedlings are nurtured to ensure only healthy plants reach the fields. With our deliberate planting schedule, we are better placed to supply constantly without interruption, thus reliable. Savenda Farms is also changing lives of its dedicated workforce drawn from the local community and beyond. So the next time you think fresh and green, think Savenda Farms.
Africa is rising to a new dawn of integrity and accountability. Are you tired of being swindled or buying fake or illegal properties? Would you like to sell or buy genuine property? Would you like to list your property on both local and international market? Don't waste your time. Call the professionals, the SGK Properties, on +260 762 166 018. SGK Properties. Your business assurance is our priority.
Your skin is the biggest muscle in your body. That's why we make sure that Oracle is #1 when it comes to taking care of your precious skin. Oracle Pure Petroleum Jelly and Glycerin soothes, moisturizes and keeps your skin perfect. Oracle Pure Petroleum products for that perfect skin.
Tense 5. We are excited to be the best community Christian TV channel within Zambia and across the world. With our programming for all age groups, talk of sermons, movies, kids programs, music, talk shows, developmental programs, and our unbiased, factual and balanced news. To you, our viewers, we are saying thank you for being part of this journey. Happy 5th anniversary. Camnet TV, not just another channel.
The Camnet October Conference is fast approaching. To participate in the forthcoming conference, you're required to book your seat by paying 750 kwacha per person per day. Date 1st and 2nd October 2021. Venue, the Healing Word Ministries International in Ibex Hill. Guest speakers include Professor Reda, Professor Munkumba, Mr. Nkuruma Kalaluka, Dr. Musonda, Dr. Sitima, Anthony from USA, Dr. Mwale, Honorable Bob Sichinga, Elias Pondela, and your hosts, Pastors Victoria and Moses Chiluba.
You can also participate via Zoom at 300 kwacha per day.
Make your payments through mobile money for MTN 096 296 5883, for Airtel 097 975 3010. Our banking details are 913 000 182 5325, Stanbic Bank, Kablonga branch.
For those living abroad, make payments via Wild Remit. The deadline for payments will be 28 September 2021. Any late payment made after 28 September will attract a penalty fee of 200 kwacha per person.
Thank you so much for staying on. You're watching Camnet News. Care for Nature Zambia has appealed to government to consider extending the halt of construction works on Forest Reserve to Maposa Forest Reserve number 4 on the Copperbelt, which was degazetted without following the right procedure. Association Executive Director Sama Kens says Maposa Forest Reserve is a significant rain belt which cannot cease to be a forest, hence calling on the repeal of a statutory instrument number 1 of 2021 to allow for the regazettation of the forest. Mrs. Kens says government should be commended for taking a step in trying to conserve the nature resources.
We are very happy by the decision that government has made to halt all construction works in Forest 27. We would like to thank the Honourable Ministers for Lands and Natural Resources, Honourable Elijah Muchima, and the Minister for Local Government and Rural Development, Honourable Gary Kombo, for the bold move that they have taken. And at the same time, we would like to appeal that they extend this gesture to other forests countrywide which were degazetted without following procedure. For example, on the Copper Belt, we have Maposa Forest Reserve number 4, which was degazetted without adequate consultation. We are therefore appealing that statutory instrument number 1 of 2021 be revisited so that this forest, which is a significant rain belt, can be regazetted. We are hoping with the coming of the green economy and environment, we are going to see more dedication to conserving our natural resources, and we are very happy and very sure that the new Dawn government under the administration of the President Hakainde Hichilema is going to help us to protect our natural resources.
The opposition Golden Party President Jackson Silawe has charged that the success of the UPND administration is dependent on the correct interpretation of the vote cast during the August 12th general elections. Mr. Silawe notes that the cost of living and doing business in Zambia continues to be out of reach for many people, a situation he says needs urgent intervention by government. He says Lusaka is the 25th most expensive city in Africa to live in, and 64% of all Zambians live below the poverty line. In this regard, Mr. Silawe has urged the UPND government to constitute a very high-level economic management team to create a local-driven strategy for job creation and lifting millions of Zambians from poverty.
We are of the view that the economic management team, a high-level economic management team, will be able to advise the president on creating a local strategy for lifting millions of Zambians out of poverty. We believe that the high-level economic management team can be able to tell the president, or advise the president on how we can come up with a strategy for job creation. We've got a lot of people right now who are not working. Over 65,000 teachers and qualified are not working. We've got 5.5 million Zambians, over 5.5 million Zambians of the working age that are not doing anything. So really, he needs to use a very big gun to come out swinging to make sure that he settles out this problem once and for all. We have got the high cost of doing business in the country. We are proposing that he suspends withholding tax, for example, on Zambians, both residential and commercial, to bring down the cost of doing business. You look at also the cost of running a business in Zambia is still too high. And these are the things that will free resources from businesses and at household level come into the economy and be able to use that money to grow the economy.
Former Inspector General of Police KAKOMA KANGANJA has officially passed on the baton to his predecessor Lemi Kajoba following his dismissal by President Hakainde Hichilema. Speaking during a retreat parade in his honor, Mr. KANGANJA says during his tenure of office, he never engaged in any vices such as corruption, but that he served Zambian people with dignity. The former IG says he has scored many successes in various areas which are very visible, and adds that no leader can score 100% in all areas. Meanwhile, newly appointed Inspector General of Police Lemi Kajoba says the end of one era marks the beginning of another and has assured members of the general public he will ensure that the law is applied fairly and firmly.
The police service band marching on parade.
After serving for 6 years as Inspector General of Police, today Mr. KAKOMA KANGANJA is handing over the instruments of authority to the new Inspector General of Police, Mr. Lemi Kajoba.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I was most qualified police officer, but God qualified me because, as you may all know, authority comes from God. I did not allow myself to be contaminated into short-lived things like corruption, partisan politics, and indeed other ill vices. Mine was to perform my duties professionally, diligently, and ethically. I believe that is one of the accolades that saw His Excellency the President, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, to appoint me into this highest office of the police service.
Therefore, I wish to assure members of the public that my command has already started working and will ensure that law enforcement is undertaken unequivocally and within the confines of the law. This entails that regardless of the characteristics of the persons or groups involved, the law will be applied fairly but also firmly.
In other news, a 75-year-old retrenchee from the Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines, Francis Mwana Kayaya, has called on government to clear his dues, stating that he's been trying to get his terminal benefits for 29 years. Speaking to Camnet TV, Mr. Mwana Kayaya explains that he is currently suffering from poor health and can hardly walk, as he has been affected from working in the mines, where he served for 27 years, but has no money to seek medical attention. He has since appealed to the head of state to help him and other retirees who have been advocating for their dues for many years, but to no avail.
His name is Francis Mwana Kayaya, a 75-year-old man who has been advocating for his terminal benefits for almost 30 years now, since being retrenched from the Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines ZCCM in 1992. Mr. Mwana Kayaya, like numerous other retirees and retrenchees around the country, has been advocating for his benefits in successive governments to no avail. The retrenchee has explained to Camnet News that he is desperately in need of his terminal benefits as he is suffering ill health and has no money to get treatment. The former ZCCM worker also narrates that he can hardly walk as his feet are failing him, hence the need for his benefits to be paid quickly to enable him get treatment before it's too late.
So up to now,
I've been struggling for this money from 1992, 98 up to today. Nothing good has been progressed. So was it CCM? Ndiamira nangisokoneza nkani chifukwa ine chakudya pa nyumba nilibe, mphamvu zosebenza nilibe, chifukwa nasebenza mines for 27 years. As an old man, I'm now 75 years. I'm having no food stuff at home this time.
Mr. Mwanakayaya explains that while over 1 million kwacha is owed to him by government, he has to depend on relatives for food and a roof, but adds that they cannot always meet his needs, especially those of paying for quality medical attention.
So, ama challenges ya kalamba onde facing now ni matenda, momendo anivuta. Okay? Momendo na musana inivuta. So by this time, nipempa boma initandize. Chifukwa ine mpamvoti ningasebenze nchito nilibe. Nilepela kulima payade so chifukwa cha musana. Nilepela. Chifukwa nasebenza umaini. Finabine finali kuniko umaini mas chini nacha machine telephone tower for a long time. So mpamvu nilibe madam.
The retrenchee has placed his hope in the recently elected United Party for National Development UPND government, calling on President Hakainde Hichilema to look into his plight and that of other retirees and retrenchees in a similar situation. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News, Lusaka.
You're watching Camnet News. We take another set of commercials. When we return, we look at international and sports news. Stay with us.
Would you like to win some cool cash? Say no more. Stand a chance to win your share of 1 million kwacha. Simply make a transaction from your ZAMTEL mobile money account and you could be one of weekly winners of up to 10,000 kwacha. Be empowered with ZAMTEL mobile money. Dial *344# to activate your account. This promotion runs from 28th July to 31st October 2021. ZAMTEL, your digital lifestyle partner.
At Savenda Express Printing, we have the capacity to deliver quality in all kinds of printing services timely. Our lines of production include screen printing, embroidery, lithography, and large format printing. We take pride in delivering quality work at very competitive rates with our in-house, highly experienced and qualified designers. With the ability to print full color and embossing prints, our state-of-the-art screen printing machines are able to print 1,000 pieces per hour. Our embroidery machines are able to print any logo with 1 or up to 12 colors all at once and has an output capacity of 100 pieces per hour. Savenda Express Printing also does large format printing for billboards, banners, vinyl, car stickers, posters, tire covers, cups, pens, bags, flasks, packaging boxes, and well, just anything that can need printing. For inquiries, give us a call on 0960 344 471.
The Camnet October Conference is fast approaching. To participate in the forthcoming conference, you're required to book your seat by paying 750 kwacha per person per day. Date 1st and 2nd October 2021. Venue the Healing Word Ministries International in Ibex Hill. Guest speakers include Professor Reda, Professor Munkumba, Mr. Nkuruma Kalaluka, Dr. Musonda, Dr. Sitima, Anthony from USA, Dr. Mwale, Honorable Bob Sichinga, Elias Bondela, and your hosts, Pastors Victoria and Moses Chiluba.
You can also participate via Zoom at 300 kwacha per day.
Make your payments through mobile money. For MTN, 096 296 5883. For Airtel, 097 975 3010. Our banking details are 913 000 182 5325. Stanbic Bank, Kablonga Branch.
For those living abroad, make payments via Wild Remit. The deadline for payments will be 28th September 2021. Any late payment made after 28th September will attract a penalty fee of 200 kwacha per person.
Welcome back. You're still watching Camnet News. We now look at international stories. West African leaders meeting in Ghana's capital on Thursday imposed a travel ban and asset freeze on Guinea's army rulers, the bloc's toughest response yet to a spate of coups in the region. The ECOWAS sanctions also extended to family members of the junta leaders. The bloc also demanded a quick return to civilian rule. The demand came after a summit of the 15 National Region Group to decide how to respond to the September 5th host of President Alpha Conde by Special Forces troop commanded by Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. In other news, Congolese opposition leader Martin Fayulu has demanded an investigation after security forces brutally dispersed a rally he called over election reforms. Police fired in the air in Kinshasa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, capital, on Wednesday to disperse Fayulu's supporters, injuring some in the process. Al Jazeera has more on this.
West African leaders meeting in Ghana's capital on Thursday imposed a travel ban and asset freeze on Guinea's army rulers, the bloc's toughest response yet to a spate of coups in the region. The sanctions also extend to family members of the junta leaders. The ECOWAS bloc also demanded a quick return to civilian rule.
The transition should not last more than 6 months. So 6 months, election should be held. Because the election will allow the restoration of the constitutional order in the Republic of Guinea.
The bloc also piled more pressure on Mali's rulers, demanding they stick to an agreement to organize elections next February. It announced sanctions on those it said were frustrating a return to constitutional rule.
Because they are concerned about the slow progress in the preparation of the election, they decided to impose sanctions on those who have negative impact in the implementation of the transition electoral process.
The ECOWAS chief also commented on reports that Mali was nearing an agreement with Russian private security group Wagner to deploy in the country. Bamako has denied the reports, which have attracted a strong warning from former colonial ruler France.
The head of state were very concerned. They condemned this very clearly and very firmly because they consider that this will have negative consequences in the security situation in Mali and in our region.
Guinea's junta was due to hold its last day of consultations on the future of the country in Conakry on Friday. Alpha Conde's ouster has received political backing at home but courted international condemnation. There was no immediate word from Mali on ECOWAS's new measures. Congolese opposition leader Martin Fayulu has demanded an investigation after security forces brutally dispersed a rally he had called over election reforms. Police fired in the air on Wednesday to disperse Fayulu's supporters, injuring some in the process. We had more than 30 arrests, more than 20 injured. Now we're told that everyone has been released. We still have 2 or 3 people we're looking for in Kinshasa. But what is serious is that I was brutalized, I was touched, I was molested, and I was insulted like rotten fish. Fayulu lost to Felix Tshisekedi in the 2018 election that many observers say was rigged. We demand a serious investigation to find out who molested who beat up who. Because this was repression. It doesn't resemble the normal behavior of the Congolese police. He's accused Tshisekedi of seeking to commit fraud in the 2023 vote.
La réforme de la loi portant organisation et fonctionnement de la Commission électorale nationale.
The reform of the law on the organization and functioning of the Independent National Election Commission. We have this law and have proposed it since March. Second proposal, the electoral law. Since April 10th, we have made a proposal for the electoral law. And finally, we have made propositions on the law on the identification of voters. Fayulu has maintained that Tshisekedi is an illegitimate president.
Well, the international stories were courtesy of Africa News and Notes as Al Jazeera. We look at sports news. The National Sports Council has appealed to the National Paralympic Committee of Zambia to build solid foundations, which will see numerous representation in different Paralympic tournaments. Speaking to Camnet TV Sports, Acting General Secretary Raphael Mulenga says government wants to see a physically fit Zambia, which will be able to compete in different sporting activities. Mulenga said this when he officiated at the Global Sports Mentoring Program.
With 43 associations affiliated to the National Sports Council of Zambia, meant to develop and implement grassroots and mass participation in sports, aimed at increasing participation rates within different sports disciplines, such as wheelchair basketball. NSCZ Acting General Secretary Raphael Mulenga disclosed to Camnet Sports when he officiated at the Global Sports Mentoring Program that government wants to see a physically fit Zambia, which will be able to compete in different sporting activities.
Country of champions, which should be able to compete favorably. So we have got a work to do to actualize the vision of our leadership. We have got work to do to interpret the vision of the leadership as contained in the manifesto into the actual activities and programs in the country. And this program today fits very well into the bigger picture.
And South African wheelchair basketball chairperson says people living with disability should be given a fair chance into sports.
Sports ministry here as well, because they gotta understand that, you know what, with sports can open up a lot of doors for a lot of people, you know. So, and let alone that the sports can give you good health, but it also gives you better opportunities out there in terms of employment, you know. So in South Africa, there's a high percentage of people with disabilities who do not have that are unemployed, you know, and most of them are engaged into sports, you know.
Meanwhile, National Paralympic Committee of Zambia Acting Secretary says Paralympic has become a wide sport.
It's been shown on the large screen in the Paralympic Games. It's just about taking few athletes, if not two, then one. Therefore, Paralympic is now very much wide. Through the program which we are also doing, we are conducting a program called Impossible, or other words you can say Para Sports Against Stigma. So over that, we are seeing that Paralympic should also do a lot in terms of going out there to bring more athletes, as the area speaker spotted out.
Paralympics will bring more sports lovers on board to participate in different sporting activities. Blessings Chakwila, Camnet Sports, Lusaka.
Well, that sporting item ends our news this evening. The headlines once again. President HH fires senior government officials. The UPND government urged to be cautious with constitutional reforms. Former police IG KAKOMA KANGANJA claims that he was never corrupt as he bids farewell to the service. In international news, West Africa turns to sanctions. And in sports news, National Paralympic Committee of Zambia urged to build solid foundations. We now look at the Camnet verse for the day, and it's coming from Luke 6, verse 35 to 36, and it reads, "But love your enemies, do what is good, and lend, expecting nothing in return, when your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is gracious to the ungrateful and evil, but be merciful just as your Father who is merciful." Thank you so much for choosing us. My name is Sharon Kalimbula. Good night. Stay blessed.